Now, join us to talk about what happened today in the House Oversight Committee. Very pleased to have with us on the program Ken Blackwell and Ken Klukowski, the co-authors of the Blueprint, Obama's Plan to Subvert the Constitution and Build an Imperial Presidency. Kens, thank you both for coming on the program tonight.
Good to be with you, Cam.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Okay, first of all, am I right? This isn't just a Republican scandal. This isn't something that should just bother conservatives or gun owners or NRA members.
No, it isn't. And look, this is the most lawless president in the history of our country. And I think that we must bring sharp focus to that fact. This is a guy who has changed the national philosophy of the country, or is he attempting to change it? This is a guy who has moved the focus from the sovereignty to the individual to power concentrated in the executive branch of the federal government. And then when he has a law that he doesn't like, he ignores it. And so fast and furious and disregard for procedure and the balance of power and between the three branches is just an example that Ken and I have been harping upon, another example of a pattern that we've been harping upon for, 3 years now. That says this guy is rapidly trying to move us back to a monarch-like presidency.
Ken, I want to ask you, Ken Klukowski, I want to ask you because I saw your post at Breitbart earlier today on what exactly President Obama is claiming here. I thought it was an interesting point. This doesn't necessarily, the president is not necessarily saying that there is a privileged communication between he and the Attorney General, but he's also, what he's saying doesn't preclude the possibility of communication between the White House and DOJ being withheld.
Well, that's right, Kim. A number of people, I think, kind of jumped forward a little too fast, saying, oh, executive privilege, the White House, that means the president was involved with this. Oh, my goodness, this is a blockbuster. And you're right. Maybe when it's all said and done, we'll find out that there was some White House involvement. However, there's a little-known second type of executive privilege, which is what applies even if the president's not involved, just if there's any sort of high-level executive branch official who says that for whatever reason the material needs to be kept confidential. Now, for the reasons I set forth in the Breitbart piece, I am fully confident that if the House sticks to what they're doing, if they push this forward into a court case, they're going to win. They are going to get a court order saying that executive privilege does not shield the Attorney General from handing over all of these facts about Fast and Furious. So I believe at the end of the day that the claim of executive privilege will be defeated. But that's right. There is a way for the Attorney General, for the President to assert executive privilege for matters pertaining to the Attorney General, matters that the President himself has never been personally involved with.
Talking with Ken Klukowski and Ken Blackwell, the authors of the Blueprint, Obama's Plan to Subvert the Constitution and Build an Imperial Presidency. So next week, looks like, again, unless these documents are turned over, it looks like the full House is going to vote on contempt charges. What happens next?
Well, the tick-tock on that is when you vote to hold someone in contempt of Congress, that's a criminal prosecution. So it is turned over for the federal prosecutor with jurisdiction of that area, so the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Now, that guy is a lawyer for the Justice Department. Eric Holder is his boss. In fact, he's his boss's 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 boss. So the U.S. Attorney has, I'd have to check the law, it's either 30 or 60 days to advise the Speaker of the House if he's not going to move forward with a criminal prosecution. I hope Speaker Boehner would, in the referral, put in just a little footnote saying, by the way, we know this is your boss. If you're not going to prosecute him, could you tell us right away, maybe next week? Don't wait for 2 months. Mm-hmm. Because if the U.S. Attorney says, I'm not moving forward, then the ball goes back to the House's court. And what they do then is, if they pass a second majority resolution, they can then authorize Darrell Issa to file a federal lawsuit in the name of the U.S. House asking for a court order to command Eric Holder to turn over this 140,000 pages of documents.
Okay. Now, Ken Blackwell, what exactly is the president saying as to why these documents should be withheld, and why claim executive privilege now? I mean, the subpoena's been out there since October of last year.
Well, Ken Kukowski probably knows the finer details on the legal fight. But this is just yet another attempt of the president to push back any time anybody questions his use or misuse of executive and governmental power. Look, he has drawn a bright fault line from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and on the one side of that line are apologists for big, intrusive, don't ask me any questions government, and on the other side, we stand advocates of freedom and individual liberties. And while Ken is going to handle this in court, my job is to mobilize the political forces out here to answer this question and address this issue and this confrontation next November. There's a tremendous sense of urgency that we all better start to sense, because President Obama wants to transform our market economy into a government-controlled economy and our family-centered society into a government-centered society. And Cam, you and I have talked about this before. I think overarching here is that he really wants to transform our national philosophy founded upon the primacy of the individual and the supremacy of God to one founded upon the primacy of the collective good and the supremacy of the central government. And so, as Ken was just articulating, what this Harvard-trained lawyer is attempting to do is to use everything in his arsenal and things that he makes up to protect this paragraph.
In a statement today, and by the way, I'm going to read this entire statement later on in the program, but in a statement today, Eric Holder said, quote, "It's an election year tactic intended to distract attention, and as a result has deflected critical resources from fulfilling what remains my top priority at the Department of Justice, protecting the American people." In your opinion, Ken Blackwell, is this an election year tactic?
No, look, again, this is what he is doing is using every political and legal tool in his arsenal to protect his extra and unconstitutional efforts to transform American government. Look, he's used every crisis that he's had at his disposal to nationalize elements of our economy, from health care, where we've been doing battle, to the banks and the financial services, to schools, and energy. This is a political battle that will only be won at the ballot box. And it will only be won if we have a sense of urgency that this guy, as he promised to do a week before his election in 2008, and that was to fundamentally transform our country. And he did it from the context of his saying that he, in one way or another, he did not understand the nature of American exceptionalism. He said, well, I think the Chinese think that China's exceptional, and the Brits think that, the United Kingdom is, Great Britain is exceptional. He doesn't have a clue as to what has made us an exceptional nation, and so he's trying to shape American governance in his own image, and in that case, he's executing on a blueprint to create an imperial presidency.
Talking again with Ken Blackwell and Ken Klukowski, authors of The Blueprint, Obama's Plan to Subvert the Constitution. and build an imperial presidency. Ken Kukowski, before we let you both go, I've got to ask here. Obviously, there's the legal fight. There is also I think the court of public opinion, which is certainly going to matter quite a bit between now and November. I know on MSNBC today, the panelists were suggesting that this was great for President Obama, and this was so bad for the GOP because now it's going to distract from the economy and jobs and things of that nature. First of all, do you agree with that assessment? And secondly, how big an issue is Fast and Furious going to be throughout the rest of the summer and on into November, in your opinion?
Well, Cam, these are the same Einsteins who thought that the health care law was going to be a political home run for him, which was going to win his reelection all by itself. So, consider the source. Everything that they look at and say, boy, this is a godsend, is something that rational political Americans look at and say, I think you're dead meat. And that's, I think, what's going on here. You have, for, I believe, only the second time in our history, a U.S. Attorney General being moved for a contempt citation before the United States House of Representatives. And what is the context here? You were right to say compare it to the forerunning operation that had been going on in the last years of the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of guns. And guess what? Someone died. Not just anyone, but a federal agent wearing a badge who put his life on the line to keep us safe. And you have all of these guns. A federal agent was killed, and over 1,000 guns have just gone missing into the hands of homicidal drug cartels in Mexico, where we see stories every day on TV of their violence. So I think to suggest that this is anything other than a horrible situation, and that to the extent it looks like you are trying to cover up anything, you said you didn't know anything about it, then it turns out you do know something about it, then we find out that you've identified 140,000 pages of documents. Your listeners should just think of that. Think your living room full to the ceiling. I mean, how many pages is 140,000 pages of documents that the Justice Department says we have found all of these documents talking about what we knew about Fast and Furious, when we knew it, who knew it, and Congress says, okay, well, we're investigating this because this is serious as all get out. We're issuing you a subpoena. Hand those documents over so that the American people can see what's going on. And now you get an attorney general saying, I don't think we're going to do that. There's nothing here you need to see. I'm not handing it over, and I'm willing to create a legal crisis to avoid handing it over. I just think on the policy, Cam, that looks really bad. Yeah. On the politics, the optics, the perceptions for the American people, it looks really bad. It stinks. The American people know it, and I think that this is going to be a millstone around the neck of this administration going into November.
Ken Blackwell, Ken Klukowski, thank you both for coming on the program. Great talking to you, and look forward to doing this again very soon.
Always good to be with you, Cam.
Thank you, gentlemen.